Good afternoon and welcome to the Leadership Learning Webinar Series. This series provides monthly learning on relevant business topics like today's topic, Put the Power of Collaborative Partnerships to Work. I am Natalie Crowdell, the Program Manager of Corporate Learning Solutions at Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. We at Lake Forest Graduate School of Management are proud to be hosting today's program. Lake Forest is an independent accredited institution with over 50 years experience at providing practical business leader education. This education comes in the form of graduate business degrees, certificate programs, and targeted training and development through our Corporate Learning Solutions programs. Corporate Learning Solutions specializes in developing corporate managers and leaders by combining relevant content with the expertise of our business leader faculty to provide customized training, consultation, coaching, and organizational development services to our corporate clients. We are grateful for the sponsorship and generosity of our client and longtime supporter of the school, Trustmark and the Trustmark Foundation. Trustmark provides access to a full spectrum of flexible benefit solutions, including health plan administration for self-funded employer groups, payroll-deducted voluntary products, group medical benefits, and health and fitness management programs. We're able to bring this webinar to you on a complimentary basis as a result of Trustmark's support. Now I'd like to introduce Nicole DeFalco, our facilitator for today's session. Nicole is a faculty member at Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. Nicole is also a partner at Upsurge Advisors, where she pours her passion into equipping leaders with vital skills and usable tools to build trusting relationships and influence without authority. Throughout her career, Nicole has been involved in all aspects of performance improvement consulting. Her areas of expertise include instructional design, facilitation, and organizational change management. Nicole, we are very pleased to have you here today.
Hi, thank you so much, Natalie. It's so great to be here. I am so excited to introduce you to incredible concepts and practical tools for putting the power of collaborative relationships to work for your organization. I like a lot of interaction, so I'm going to be asking questions along the way. Please take a moment and pause and reflect on them, think through it, think about your own situations. If you're actively engaged as I'm speaking and you're kind of thinking through your own situations, that'll really help you get a lot out of this. So let's dive right in, as I said, with a question. Can you think of a time when the strength of a relationship was the reason a problem was solved or an opportunity was realized? Just take a moment and kind of think through your career. Maybe it was not a relationship that you were involved in, but maybe it was a situation in your company or with a team that you work with, and you know and you saw that that relationship really made the difference. You know, a lot of times we look at tactical performance and we think about that, but I want you to consider and imagine those times when it was truly a strong relationship that was the reason a problem got solved or an opportunity was realized. And we do this because we're fans of positive organizational psychology. Instead of staring into the abyss of errors, we prefer to look at what's going right and figure out how to replicate it across the organization. So many of you are experiencing the benefits of productive relationships already, right? You've already been able to imagine maybe at least one, so you see what's going on. But now I want you to think about this. What if you had more of them happening more often? So consider this. What if you had a way to cultivate these productive relationships when you wanted to and needed to? Just take a moment to consider that. Think of some of the benefits or what you might accomplish if you could consistently and predictably create more productive business relationships internally or externally. And I'm going to pause for a moment because I want to let you know that there's a term that I use, stakeholder. And that's a general term because when we look at business relationships, the relationships that matter are relative to your situation, right? So a stakeholder could be a customer, a client, a supplier, someone external to your organization, but a stakeholder could also be somebody internal to your organization. It might be an internal client, a group that you serve inside of your own company. It might be members of a cross-functional team that you have to work with. It might be a leadership team. A stakeholder could be one person or a group of people. So that's the general term that we're going to be using as we go through this. So I hope you were able to think for a moment of some of those benefits that you could get by being able to consistently and predictively create these powerful relationships. And the reason why healthy business relationships are so powerful is because they grant us access to information and resources when we need them. They give us a say in decisions and the support of champions who have our back when we're not in the room. It's through strong business relationships that we have the kind of trust and credibility that motivates others to follow us, to take action and help us get work done. Relationships give us influence without or even beyond authority. You know, influence is an interesting thing. It's kind of like golf. It has two elements, a long game and a short game. In terms of influence, a leader's long game is that power to drive decisions, to go the distance, to see initiatives to fruition, to execute against strategy. And that really comes from this long-term, deep commitment and dedication to building these strong, trusting relationships, right? That's where that kind of long game comes in. But there's also that short game. And the short game for a leader is getting work done today with and through others. And that requires a solid plan and the finesse to carry it out. This is our growth model for cultivating business relationships. This is a holistic approach to increasing influence and excelling within the relationship management and social awareness dimensions of emotional intelligence. We help leaders develop the skills and provide them with the tools for improving both their long and their short game. So there's an essence of both of those in this model. So far for this webinar, we've actually worked through aspects of G, groundwork for commitment, by surfacing success stories and inspiring change by naming the benefits of getting better at cultivating these vital relationships. The next step that we take in that long game is recognize and adapt. We look at the culture in which we're operating and building relationships. We look at what's for us and against us. Opt-in and trust is a deep study into what truly happens when trust is created and what really destroys trust. And there are kind of 5 questions that people will answer when they're determining whether or not they trust someone. So we really look at how to use that knowledge of those 5 questions to build trusting relationships. Widen your reach has to do with making a decision, a personal commitment to influence and understanding the difference. What do highly influential people really do? What makes them so influential? And what do they do on a daily basis? And then we look at thrive and triumph in terms of some of those practices that we can adopt into our daily lives to grow our influence. And we also look at the skills that influential people use in terms of communications, positive persuasion. We look at consensus building, collaboration, and those skills and look at growing them. That's our long game. Now, remember, we also said we had that short game, right? That's getting those results done today. I've got objectives I have to meet. It's great that I can grow develop my long game here, but what about that short game? What about what I have to accomplish today with the people around me right now? And that's where Harvest Results comes in. And what we're going to do is really focus on that for the rest of our time together. And so the way that we're going to do this is we're going to begin first with a story. Stories are so powerful. So let me tell you the story of Yvonne and Nancy. I'd like you to meet them. These are 2 sisters, and they're working on a DIY project, a do-it-yourself project. They're renovating this room to be an office. With great enthusiasm, they jump right in. Yvonne starts knocking out a wall on one side of the room, while Nancy begins painting another wall. Well, let's see what happens with Yvonne and Nancy. Well, here we are 6 hours later. The room is a mess, and they have made no progress. I want you to think about the question on the screen. What is one thing that would have made this whole process go much smoother? What advice would you have given them? What might they have done differently? What's the one thing that would have saved them a lot of time and wasted effort? And I know when we ask this question in groups, a lot of times we'll get people say a contractor. That definitely would have made a difference. But assuming that they are working together, what would have made a difference? Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, well, a plan, right? If they had spent a few minutes up front planning out a process and determining how best to work together, they could have saved a lot of time and effort. Now, here's why we start with Yvonne and Nancy's story, and I want you to remember them. Because as we dive into the process for consistently cultivating more and better working relationships, I guarantee one or more of you will be thinking, if you're not even thinking this already, I don't have time for this. Well, what you do not have is time to waste. Remember, You just said investing time up front to plan and following an organized approach is more efficient and actually saves time. So I want you to keep that in mind as we go through this process. This is not one more thing to add to your already full plate. This is how to make the most of what is already on your plate. Okay, so what have we been talking about? Harvest results now. Here is the process. It represents the culmination of years of personal experience and best practices that we've gleaned from high performers across a variety of industries and functional areas. And I just want you to know, we use this process in our business, so this isn't something that we're kind of recommending, but we don't do. We actually follow this. And it starts with that first step, which is the yellow slice, define a desired outcome. So like any project plan, like any account plan in the sales world, we have a goal. We have a vision for what we want this relationship to be. And then the remaining steps help us to achieve that goal. And the reason why this is in a circle is because it's an iterative process. It keeps going. We're always working on that relationship, always continually evolving it and growing it. We've seen project engineers, marketing managers, shared services teams, service delivery consultants, and HR leaders use these methods to win support for initiatives, elevate their status and credibility with stakeholders, earn trust, and get significant results. You know, this is a perfect process whether you're an emerging leader or an experienced leader. You can follow these steps to get work done with and through others more effectively and efficiently and collaboratively, building trust and partnerships along the way. Now, inside of each one of these steps, there are 3 components to it. Every step is anchored in a very specific belief. And what we encourage is for you to adopt this belief, because then your actions will naturally fall in line to support that belief. That's just human nature, right? We behave based on what we believe. So we want to get that belief system going correctly in the right direction, and then our actions will follow. And we provide recommended action steps to take, as well as a supporting tool set to help you make this an easy, practical way to apply it in your everyday work. Okay? And so let's use a story, again, back to stories, but they're powerful and they're memorable, to see how the model can be applied to a challenge. And the one that we're going to focus on is one that internal consultants often face. So here's another group of people I want to introduce you to. This is Mikhail, Andrea, and Javier. Wave hi. Hi. They're the team. The team are amazing recruiters. They work in a mid-sized corporation, and they are able to source talent for short-term staffing needs as well as permanent placement at any level. Unfortunately, in their situation, though, many departments in the company pay outside firms instead of coming to the team. This ends up costing the company a lot of money. The team thought that if they could just get people to understand what they bring to the table, they would start to leverage them more. So the team developed a detailed presentation and they took it on the road. Sadly, few people followed up or showed up to their lunch and learns, and unfortunately the problem persisted. So I want you to just pause for a second. Does this sound even remotely familiar, right? Does something like this happen to you or a team you know? Have you ever been in a situation where outside experts were hired even though internal teams could do the same work? I'm sure a lot of you are nodding your heads, or it's even happened to you, or you've seen it happen in your company, right? It's a very common challenge. Well, we're going to coach the team through the Harvest Results Now process to see if we can show them a better way here. So we start with this first and most important step, and that is to define a desired outcome for the situation. And the belief is Stephen Covey's second habit of highly effective people, starting with the end in mind. We are casting a vision for the relationship. What will tomorrow look like? How could it be different from today? We determine that desired outcome for the relationship. We prioritize milestones to get us there. We follow the steps in the rest of the Harvest Results Now process to achieve that outcome, and we try to parlay one success into the next. And I'll show you the tool and what that looks like, the Desired Outcomes worksheet. Okay, so this is a standard sheet that we use with in our own work, right, when we have a relationship, and this is what we've taught others to do. You start by defining the current state with the relationship, and you're honest. You don't have to sugarcoat it. It's an internal tool for yourself. So you define the current state, you jump to desired state and say, what could the future look like? That's the fun part, imagining the difference. And then you come back into the middle and say, how do we bridge the gap between the current and the desired state? What are the milestones? And one option is to prioritize them as must-have, want-to-have, and nice-to-have. So here's a partially completed worksheet for the team. Okay, and so you can see they chose to focus on the IT department. And the reason why was because IT spends the most money on external staffing and recruitment, but they also have the highest turnover. They feel that currently IT doesn't understand what the team does, and they don't really get how the team can help them. And the people that they know a few of the developers in IT and maybe some of the support folks. On the desired side, they see a future in which they help IT generate a talent acquisition strategy to support business objectives. They see a time when IT relies on the team for short and long-term staffing, and they see themselves helping to build job descriptions, market positions, proactively promoting the department, helping the managers in the department interview more effectively, and then developing overall retention strategies. So they see a much more of a trusted advisor role in their future. Now, I didn't put in any milestones because this is where we're going to help the team a little bit. These are some options, some potential milestones that could move the team from their current state into their desired state. One of them, A, is meet more people at various levels within the department. B is enlist their help to build or buy a new app for pre-hires. C is get senior leaders to mandate attendance at lunch and learns. And D is learn more about the IT's operations and objectives. And I want you to think about this. You probably already have been looking at that question. Which of the following is not a milestone that will move the team closer to their desired state? So think about that for a moment. Okay, hopefully you're thinking about C, right? Getting those senior leaders to mandate the attendance at lunch and learns. And I want you to think about this. What makes A, B, and D better milestones than C? Why did you gravitate towards C as the, yeah, get that out of there one, right? And think about that. What makes A, B, and D better? Give you a moment to think on that. Hopefully you're thinking about things like, well, A, B, and D really are about building that relationship. They're about getting to know more people. They're about helping IT meet their needs first, right? Helping them to solve a particular short-term problem, and through that process, but in B, for example, helping them, get an app for pre-hires. That might be a way to get to know them better and work with them and solve an immediate need that they have, and then maybe they'll be more willing to listen to some long-term ideas. And then D is all about walking a mile in their shoes and learning about them. So C doesn't really work because, you can mandate it and you might get compliance, but you probably won't get commitment. It probably will actually erode trust because people feel like they got told on, right? And now they're being made to do something they don't want to do. And most people don't respond well to force. Even Colin Powell talks about, though the movies say, that's an order, he can't remember in his entire career when he ever said that. So even in the Army, you have to use some finesse and influence with people. So definitely C needs to get out of there, and A, B, and D are better because they're not directive, they're more collaborative. Okay, and that brings us to our next step. Once we define our desired outcome, we have to pause and take an honest assessment of how well we know and understand our stakeholders' world. And we do this because we believe that people do not care how much we know until they know how much we care. I'm going to say that again because that's a really important belief. People do not care how much we know until they know how much we care. We're going to think about that belief. Think about it in times when you've made a purchase, in the people that you trust, right? Chances are you feel that they care about you and that there was some concern for your needs, and that was part of why you were then interested to learn more from them. And in this step, this is where we do our homework. We have 5 tools. Those tools are listed here, and essentially what they do is they help us determine what we know, and more importantly, what we don't know about our stakeholders' world. We take an inventory of what's valued in their culture, and we determine, based on what's valued in their culture, what value can we bring. A lot of times we create value propositions that are all about what we think is valuable. And this is a way to really target those value propositions towards what's really important for our stakeholders. We map the social or the informal networks to understand the relationships among the players and the degree of support we can expect. And this is something that salespeople do quite often. They create these maps of the influential architecture that's going on kind of behind the formal org chart in organizations. But when we're working internally, a lot of times we don't do that. And it's really important to see the social ecosystem in which we're operating and to understand where we fit in. And then we set a plan in motion to build trust with key individuals. I want to show you one of these tools. This is the roads they travel. This is a great tool. Now, some of you might be looking at the questions on this tool. You know, what's the stakeholder's primary function? Who do they serve? How are they perceived by their stakeholders? Looking upstream and downstream, with whom do they work or who do they rely on most heavily? How is their performance measured, their metrics, their goals for the next 12 to 18, 36 months, how they're performing against those metrics, what do they consider their challenges, what do they consider their greatest opportunities. And you might be thinking, oh my gosh, this is a research project. Grab the intern. No, this is not intended to spark a long research or data gathering process. In fact, what we recommend is you complete it in 8 minutes, not even 10, 8 minutes or less. Just get a sense of how well you truly understand their world. And unlike most tests that we take, right, where we want to see how much we know and that's the value, probably the greatest value in this is that you're going to surface what you don't really know about your stakeholders' world. And it's a wonderful revelation to see what you understand and what you need to become more cognizant of. And that's really the value of it. So I want you to try it out with an important stakeholder of your own. Think about an internal or an external client, a supplier, a leader, a group. You know, maybe there's a particular group you've been thinking of the whole time we've been going through this. And I want you to think about these questions and how many of them you can answer off the top of your head. Now, if you're kind of thinking, oh yeah, I've got that data somewhere, and you're starting to mentally run through your files on your laptop, don't do that. Again, this isn't a research project. A lot of times, especially if you're working with a public company, you could probably get some of this data even online. That's not the point. What do you know off the top of your head? What do you know deep inside of you about them from memory that you're walking around with a working knowledge of, that you're pulling up and able to tap into instantly, not after a search? Okay, and so let's try, here we'll narrow it down just to even one of these questions. How many of your stakeholders' top 5 challenges for the next 12 to 24 months can you name and describe off the top of your head? None of them? 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5? This is a great exercise. I'll tell you a little anecdote. When we were working with a particular business services group on some of these methods with them, the CEO of the group was really loved this idea of everybody knowing this information about their stakeholders from, you know, just off the top of their head. And so he said, listen, I want to be able to stop anyone in the hallway, and I want to ask you who your top, who's your stakeholder, and I want you to name, 5 of their top challenges for the next 12 to 24 months. There was a bit of a panic. A lot of the people even on our team thought, oh my goodness, I don't know if I could do that for every one of my stakeholders. So it's a nice challenge. And I want you to think here, imagine if you knew this information for all of your stakeholders. How would that affect your relationships, right? Just for a moment, pause and just kind of get in your head. Imagine the CEO walking down the hallway and tapping you on the shoulder. Who do you serve? Who are you working with? Who's vital for you to get your work done? And what's most important to them? And you being able to, without a pause, just having this wonderful working knowledge, how would that impact the relationships that you have with those stakeholders? When we ask this question, we get responses like, well, it would build longer-term relationships. We'd be sure we were solving the right problems. Some people tell us that if they could know all this for their stakeholders, they would always be focused on their stakeholders' priorities. There'd be more trust. They'd be able to expand the reach or the scope of the business or the work that they do with their stakeholders. So there'd be more work and more value-added work, right? So it's really a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to start to build the background for empathy. And here is a great quote. This is Atticus Finch to his daughter Scout in To Kill a Mockingbird, the book by Harper Lee. And he says, first of all, he said, if you can learn a simple trick, Scout, you'll get along a lot better with all kinds of folks. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. Isn't that wonderful? Until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. We use a softer term, right? We say walk a mile in their shoes. So he's really He's pulling all the punches and saying it's not just their shoes, it's get into their skin, because that's how, you know, getting along better with all kinds is really a matter of truly seeing and experiencing the world as they do, not as we think they should. Right? That's important. It's seeing and experiencing the world as they do, not as we think they should. And I want you to be careful. I don't want you to mistake what you think other people's interests should be for empathy, right? Thinking that you know what's best for somebody else, you have the answers, that is not empathy. Empathy is really understanding the world from their perspective. So the homework that we do when we walk a mile in our stakeholders' shoes, that's what gives us that empathy that helps us to become more trustworthy. And let's unpack trust a little bit. People's perception of our trustworthiness depends on whether or not our actions and behaviors cause them to answer these 5 questions affirmatively or negatively. The more time we spend in their shoes, or skin, as Atticus would say, the more likely we are to earn a yes to each of these questions. And these questions are, do I perceive your intentions or focus more on my interests than your own? Do I believe you? Do you keep your promises? Am I confident you'll be loyal? Do I value your contribution? Give this a try. Think about someone you trust. Answer the 5 questions for that person. Chances are you're giving them a yes to a majority of these questions, okay? Now, you could also flip that. You could think about someone you don't trust, or even more challenging, think about somebody who doesn't trust you, someone where you have no trust or low trust. How are they answering these 5 questions for you? And where you are getting a no, that is an indicator where you need to focus your time, energy, and effort to turn that no into a yes, okay? So that's how we use these 5 questions to determine what's going well in a relationship and where we need to focus to earn more trust or repair trust. And we're going to look at how with each interaction that you have with your stakeholders, you can earn a yes, especially to question number 1, demonstrating a genuine intent to serve their interests. So let's start this journey here with another question. Which do you put on first and why? I know, it seems so obvious and simple, right? You know, but let's think about it. I mean, most of you are probably thinking, well, I put my pants on first because it's easier. If I put my shoes on and then try to put my pants on, my pants are going to get stuck going over my shoes. Well, yeah, I mean, you know, you could put your pants on after your shoes, but you're right, it's way harder, right? It takes so much more effort. How about this? Do you agree then that A should come first, that understanding others should come before being understood by others? You know, just like putting your pants on after your shoes, you can try to be understood by others first. But it's much less effort with better results if you start by understanding others first. Here's some time-honored wisdom on the matter. Some really good quotes. Back to Stephen Covey, who says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And Proverbs 18:2, fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinions. And the next step in our process draws its name from this wisdom. The next step is to seek first to understand, and our belief is do not jump to solution. Size up situations before solving them. Okay, size up situations before solving them. Jumping to solution can cause us to solve the wrong problem or move ahead without proper commitment from our stakeholders. We're going to learn a more effective, disciplined approach to stakeholder interactions that helps us keep from jumping to solution. Investing the time up front to explore problems or opportunities together earns us credibility and trust and influence in the situation. The approach you're about to learn can be used to develop a mutual understanding of a situation or opportunity, whether you're reacting to stakeholders or initiating interactions. And this controlled approach is called LOLA. Here's Lola, okay? And Lola, we call her a cadence. Lola is a cadence, a rhythm or a pace we set with our stakeholders. And we use the word cadence instead of conversation because we want to remember that it's about the rhythm of the interaction, whether it is a conversation or even in our written communication. So much happens now across email and IM. We're not necessarily on the phone. We're not necessarily in the same room. So I want you to remember that this cadence, this rhythm can happen whether it's in a text, an email, whether you're on Skype, whether you're in the room, in a conversation. And the other thing about Lola is Lola scales. The cadence is for all topics, from the simple to the complex. It can be a single short conversation or a series of discussions over time. And I'll just give you a brief overview of Lola. Lola starts with a lead-in. Set the context for a discussion or with a comment or a question from the other person's point of view. One thing that you could do as a lead-in is affirm what you hear them say, and that's a good way to lead into your next question, right? So this is the context for your discussion or for your comment. It's laying the groundwork. Then you use open-ended questions. Stick with questions that begin with what, how, help me to understand, tell me more about. You want questions that are going to engage a dialogue. And try to avoid one-word answers or closed-ended questions that just get you a simple yes or no. The key is that the questions that you ask, you need to take you and your stakeholder on a journey away from the solution. These are questions not to understand a potential solution, but to fully understand the situation in front of you. What are we solving for? We need to have a clear, common definition of that, right? We need to agree on it. And I'll give you an example. I want you to think of the word efficiency. Okay, I'm in a consulting field. Sometimes we'll get asked, can you help us improve efficiency? Sure, we can help improve efficiency, but efficiency can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So when somebody uses the word efficiency, improve productivity, improve performance, general terminology like that, if I assume that they're thinking the same thing I'm thinking and we jump right into solution, I'm solving for what was in my head and they want me to be solving for what's in their head. So instead we use Lola in those open-ended questions to surface, well, what does that mean to you? Let's get a mutual picture of what we're talking about. And then the last thing, then you want to listen, be attentive, listen to what's said and what's not said. If you're in the same room with them, listen globally. Take it in with all of your senses. Notice body language. Just notice all of these different reactions from that person. If you're on the phone, again, just listen, for tone of voice, what's said, what's not said. And then you want to affirm. Acknowledge that you've been listening by paraphrasing back what you heard. Demonstrate empathy. Your affirmation can also be your lead into your next question. So let's look at how the team could use this cadence to transform their interactions with the IT department. Okay, so this is Camilla. She's in IT, and she says to Javier, fine. You want to help with staffing? How fast can you get us 3 new developers? Okay, she's giving him the order. Javier says, we can definitely help with your staffing needs. It sounds like the situation is urgent. Help me understand a bit more about the project so we can work together to determine the right approach. And I want you to notice that instead of just agreeing with Camilla about the number of developers, Javier uses Lola to focus the conversation first on sizing up the situation. And you can see the parts of Lola in there, right? He is affirming what he heard. I can definitely help you. He's acknowledging that, he hears her sense of urgency. Sounds like the situation's urgent. But now he's going to use this other open-ended question, help me understand a bit more, to move her off solution. Okay, and now he's going to be able to listen and truly help. And I want you to think about this. What might have happened if Javier simply had said, sure, I'll get you 3 developers right away? How often have we done that? How often have somebody asked us for something and in this desire to seem responsive and to just want to help so badly, we just jump right in. Yes, of course I can do that, and we take off with it. Well, what would have happened in this situation if Javier had done that? What are the potential things that could have gone on there? Well, what if 3 was not the right number of developers? Or what if it's not developers that we need? What if we got people then who have the wrong skill? That only proves the point that why it's better to use outside staffing services instead of the team. More bodies may not be the issue. That could be a waste of time and money. Again, if Javier just jumps on it instead of asking these good questions, he's going to get perceived as an order taker, and he's going to set an expectation for how things are going to go in the future. So he's just training Camilla that, yes, you ask, you say jump, and I'm just going to say how high. right? And that's not value added for the company, for the department, or for the team. Okay, so before moving into our next step, I want you to consider two car buying experiences. Very different now. We're kind of shifting gears here a little bit, but which would you prefer? Which car buying experience would you rather have? Dealership A, where the salesperson tells you what car you're going to buy and promptly begins filling out the paperwork, or dealership B, where the salesperson asks you questions to understand your likes and needs, then explores options with you until you determine the best car for you? Which would you prefer? Well, chances are it's B. I mean, that's really the car buying experience most of us are hoping to have, right? Well, the Brafman brothers, in a wonderful book called Sway, explain to us why B is really where our preference is. And this is an interesting thing. They say we don't typically think of fairness as an irrational force or an influential force, but it dramatically affects our perception and sways our thinking. I want you to pay attention to this carefully. How we are treated, the fairness of the procedure, has much to do with our satisfaction as the ultimate outcome. Although the outcome might be exactly the same, when we don't get to voice our concerns, we perceive the overall fairness of the experience quite differently. So I want you to remember that fairness is very important, and that's going to lead us into our next step, which is collaborate to solve. Okay, and so look at our belief. Stakeholders should not feel you are doing something to them, but rather that you are working with them. The essence of collaborate to solve is this is your opportunity to put fairness into the process. Now, for some of us who've very experienced consultants, salespeople, we're strong, firm believers in what we do, right? If we go through, Seek First to Understand, oh my goodness, we've been asking these questions, we've been giving our stakeholders this voice, and now we get to collaborate to solve. This is our chance to show how much we know, to really establish our credibility with case studies and examples and these wonderful solutions that we want to bring to the table. Yes, that's okay. We should have a lot to bring to the table, but we have to leave room for our stakeholders' voice. We have to make room for their voice, and that's what the Collaborate to Solve process is about. Based on a mutual understanding of the situation that you established in the prior step, now what you're going to do, you confirm that mutual understanding. Here's the picture we painted of the current situation. You get confirmation of that. Then what you want to do is facilitate a process to collaborate on the optimal solution. So what I would recommend to you is, yes, bring examples, bring case studies, bring your credibility to the table, bring your experience to the table, but do it in a way where what you're doing is you're allowing your stakeholders a voice in the process. You are bringing a straw man and letting them dress it into the scarecrow, right? You've got the sauce started on the stove, but you invite them into the kitchen with you to add their ingredients to the sauce so that they'll eat that at the table with you, right? And that's how you get that commitment. So often we're brought in to consult on change management initiatives because the people who were involved in the process early on are not the ones who are receiving the end result of, that solution is being implemented to them, not with them. And so there's not buy-in as we go forward. So this is how you truly get buy-in, okay? And again, collaborating to solve, it really ensures your stakeholders feel you're working with them and not doing something to them. And this is an example of, it's kind of a condensed version of the collaboration checklist. That's a lot more robust than the tool itself. But the idea is just to show you that you're using open-ended questions to confirm a mutual understanding of this situation. You are coming to the table with ideas, thought starters. You are tailoring messages to your stakeholders' preference and style. If you have time ahead, you're socializing an agenda, being creative, even getting your stakeholders involved in the agenda and the planning process. And when you begin by first confirming the situation. Right? No assumptions. Even if we just had the situation discussion yesterday, we were seeking first to understand yesterday, and now we're talking to collaborate to solve today, we still need to confirm. If this is one conversation where you're moving from seek to understand into collaborate to solve, and that happens a lot on less complex situations, again, you still need to pause and confirm that we both are looking at the same definition of efficiency or productivity or whatever the situation is. Then you go through the collaboration process, and we've got an agenda for that. And then you want to make sure that you have a strategy to keep the lines of communication open. Okay, so that's collaborate to solve. And this is Fiona, another kind of story here, but and let me tell you a little bit about Fiona. She's trying to earn money for a class trip by mowing lawns. The Pack family down the street hired her, and they are her only customer. But there are plenty of other lawn and gardening companies serving other families in the neighborhood. If you were Fiona, what would you do to keep your one and only customer? Think about that. If you were a little Fiona here, what would you do to keep your one and only customer? And you could probably come up with some really good ideas for Fiona, right? She might always be asking them, you know, how do you like what I'm doing? Is there anything more that I could do? Right? Is the time okay? She'd show up on time, right? She'd care for them. Maybe she might bring a little plant and ask permission to plant it for them, and, you know, something like that. I mean, there are a lot of things. Now I want you to think about this. How would you treat your stakeholder if they were your one and only stakeholder, but you were not their only option? Now, if you're in sales, you've probably run through a similar exercise like this where you look at your customers and you say, okay, if this was it, if my account, you know, my book of business were down to this one account, what would we do? Right? That's always a wonderful thought process. But now think about this. If you serve an internal group, if you're HR or you're IT or you're the team, you know, Javier and his group, how often do you stop and think, what if? What if this were my only stakeholder, but they have lots of options? And that's really the first thing that we start out with in our next step, is that belief that we're going to treat each stakeholder as if they were our only stakeholder, but we are not their only option. You know, too often we rely on our tactical performance to please our stakeholders and earn credibility. And this creates momentary successes, the value of which gets quickly eroded when stakeholder expectations go unmet. If we rely only on tactical execution, we fall into a what have you done for me lately syndrome with our stakeholders. We want to build collaborative partnerships that not only weather the storms, they grow stronger because of the teamwork during the storm. We want our stakeholders to enlist our support in difficult situations, not point the finger of blame at us. They should consider us a trusted, indispensable partner, whether we're tackling troubles or planning for triumph. While meeting or exceeding those near-term expectations, we have to focus deliberate, consistent attention on relationship-building actions and activities to achieve this long-term vision for our stakeholders. So what this is about is marrying our daily implementation activities with relationship-building activities every step of the way. And this is one of the tools that we use, the relationship cultivator. Again, this is kind of a condensed version of it. But it just gets us thinking, what are those relationship building activities from the stakeholder's point of view? So we start to look at maybe what's their desired outcome for the relationship? How would they measure success? That's going to give you some ideas of what you can do. How can we track the progress of the relationship, right? Unlike SMART goals, a desired outcome is more of a narrative. It's a picture of what's different, and there might be measurable aspects to it. For example, the team might notice a decrease in spending on external staffing resources, but that's a byproduct. But how do we know the relationship is better, right? So what are we looking at from that perspective? How can we celebrate successes together? That's such a huge thing, eating together, celebrating together, doing informal things together. And it becomes even more difficult when we're in a virtual world, but it can be done. And how can we parlay this situation into the next? How do we make this serve as our stepping stone to an even stronger partnership? And I'll tell you, the greatest challenge for that last one sometimes is when you're already in a good relationship with your stakeholders and you're looking at how do we go from good to great? And what does that really deeper partnership look like? And what are we doing together? And what are we, maybe it's not solving their problem or our problem. Maybe it's together we're solving a totally different problem, or there's another opportunity we could never have even dreamed of, but now we can because we're so strongly partnered together, okay? So before we close, let's find out what happened to the team, right? I don't want to leave you hanging here. It's not a cliffhanger, right? So here's the team. Javier had that critical conversation with Camilla. Now, remember, she originally thought they needed 3 more bodies because they were falling behind. But after talking it through with Javier, they realized the real problem was the tool they were developing lacked structure and the project team lacked focus. So to collaborate on a solution, Javier facilitated a brainstorming session with Camilla, the program manager, and a solution architect actually from another project. Now what they determined was that instead of 3 developers, they really needed a senior solution architect who could guide this project. And IT said they would love someone who would be able to, stay on full-time down the road. So maybe come on for the project, and if it was a good fit, have that person stay. Javier helped them generate the position description, identify and interview candidates, and ultimately pick the right person, who did end up working for the company when the project was finished. Javier stayed in touch with Camilla throughout the project. He assisted with onboarding the new person, and he really wanted to make sure that things continued to run smoothly. So that's how he kind of married in those relationship building activities into the daily work. Now, based on this project, Camilla and her manager then enlisted the team's help to develop a more structured talent acquisition strategy for the group. Camilla's manager then introduced the team to the finance manager, who was working on expanding the audit department. So you can see, not only did the success from the one situation parlay into more of a strategic, trusted advisor role for the team within IT, but now they have a warm referral into the finance department. So instead of those lunch and learns was the equivalent of cold calling. Instead of that, now they've got that warm referral, and they're building those relationships. So one last thing for you. To move information into long-term memory and make it actionable, it's so good to reflect on what you learned and envision how you use it. So I'd just like to take a moment, give you this moment. Name one of your top takeaways from this session. You don't have to use my words. Say it out loud to yourself, jot it in a note, write it down in your own words. What is one top takeaway from the session, and how do you plan to use it to cultivate even better relationships with your stakeholders? Right? Make this time have an ROI to it. Think about what is really sticking out in your mind. Write that down or say it out loud, and then I want you to plan one action step for applying it, and that'll really help you to take the next steps. So thank you so much for your time and interest in putting the power of collaborative partnerships to work, and I'm going to hand it back to Natalie.
Thank you, Nicole. That was a great session. We hope you've gotten some good information from this session. Today's program was part of the Leadership Learning webinar series delivered to you by Lake Forest Graduate School of Management. This program is an extension of our business management education, which is also part of our MBA degree program and corporate learning solutions. This program was made possible by our sponsor, the Trustmark Foundation. Again, our deepest thanks for their support. We will be offering some future webinars. Please look in your email for registration links to the upcoming sessions. With that, we'd like to end the session and wish you a productive rest of your day.